October of '52, I was standing in Reverend Polk's parlor in Harlan Hollow, Kentucky, watching a 17-year-old girl get sold like a sack of feed corn, $75. That's what her stepfather said she was worth. 50 for him, 25 for the church's trouble. The girl sat there silent as a grave, hands folded, eyes on nothing. Hadn't spoke a word in 5 years, they said. Trauma. The kind that reaches in and steals your voice clean away. I was the buyer. Oswin Thatcher, 36 years old, widowed, 3 half-wild children, and desperate enough to think a mute girl might be the answer to my prayers. Figured she couldn't complain, couldn't argue, couldn't tell me I was doing everything wrong. But here's what I learned that fall, friend. Silence ain't the same as agreement. And by the time the first snow hit the mountains, either we'd be a family, or that girl would be dead, and it'd be my fault. Now let me tell you how it happened. The parlor smelled like pipe tobacco and old hymn books. I stood there hat in hand, boots still caked with sawdust from the morning shift, staring at the transaction like it was happening to somebody else. Reverend Polk sat behind his desk like a banker, fingers steepled, Bible open to some verse I'm sure he thought justified the whole mess. To his left, Dewey Porter sprawled in a chair, tobacco juice staining the corner of his mouth, eyes red from last night's whiskey or this morning's, hard to tell with Dewey. And between us, straight-backed on a wooden chair, sat Clementine Porter. She was thin, too thin. Dark hair pulled severe from a face that might have been pretty if it wasn't so carefully blank. Her dress was faded calico, let out twice at the seams and still straining. Her hands sat folded in her lap, fingers interlaced so tight the knuckles showed white. She didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone, just stared at a water stain on the ceiling like she was memorizing its shape. Now, Brother Thatcher, Reverend Polk said, voice dripping with what he probably thought was Christian charity, I want you to understand what you're taking on here. This girl hasn't spoken a single word in 5 years. Dr. Brennan examined her, says there's nothing physically wrong. It's trauma, he called it, in the mind. I ain't asking her to speak, I said, voice flat as I could make it. Just need help with the children. Dewey leaned forward, grinning like a dog with a bone. She can work, though. Strong as an ox, this one. Cooked and cleaned for me and her mama for years. Never complains. Well, can't complain, can she? He laughed at his own joke. Nobody else did. And she's pure, he added, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret. Untouched, if you get my meaning. Still a virgin, clean goods. I saw her jaw tighten, saw the way her fingers dug deeper into her own palms. But she didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept staring at that damn water stain. The arrangement, Reverend Polk continued, sliding a piece of paper across the desk, is $75, 50 to Mr. Porter here for his considerable expense in raising the girl after her mother's untimely passing, 25 to the church for facilitating this Christian union and filing the necessary papers with the county clerk. I looked at that paper, looked at the numbers, looked at Dewey Porter's greedy eyes and Reverend Polk's smooth, practiced face. Thought we fought a war about buying and selling people, I said quietly. Polk's smile tightened. This isn't slavery, Brother Thatcher. This is Christian charity. The girl needs a home. Your children need a mother. It's God's provision working through mortal hands. God's provision? Right. I reached into my coat. The money was there. 3 months' wages, saved quarter by quarter. Sarah had been gone 3 years and the house smelled like bachelor despair. The boys were growing up wild as weeds. Little Ruth still had tangles in her hair I couldn't figure how to comb out, and she cried for her mama every night till her voice went hoarse. I needed help. That's what I told myself. I laid the bills on the desk. Dewey's hand shot out like a snake strike, snatching them up, counting them twice. Pleasure doing business, he said, standing, not even looking at the girl. She's got 1 bag, that's all she's taking. And don't come crying to me if she turns difficult. I tried to beat the silence out of her more than once. He shrugged. Never took. The girl, Clementine, stood. She moved like water, quiet and deliberate. Picked up a battered carpet bag from beside the door. Everything she owned in the world fitting in 1 piece of worn leather and cloth. She walked toward me, stopped 3 feet away, still wouldn't meet my eyes. We're married then? I asked Polk. In the eyes of man and God, I'll file the papers Monday. You're legal and binding. Legal and binding. Like a deed. Like a timber contract. I turned to leave. She followed. Outside, my truck sat rust-spotted and mud-spattered in the October sun. I opened the passenger door for her. She climbed in without a word. Well, without a sound. There's a difference. I closed the door gentle as I could and walked around to the driver's side. The engine coughed twice, sputtered, then caught. I pulled onto the dirt road that wound up into the mountains. We drove in silence. Complete, total silence. Not the comfortable kind you get with someone you know. The empty kind. The kind that echoes. The road climbed. October leaves, red, gold, brown, scattered across the windshield. The sun hung low between the peaks, turning everything the color of old brass. I cleared my throat. I got 3 kids, I said, eyes on the road. Micah's 9. He's the oldest. Remembers his mama clear. Probably won't take to you easy. I gripped the wheel tighter. Eli's 6. Wets the bed still, scared of the dark. And Ruth, she's just 3. Sweet as honey but cries something fierce at night. She nodded once. Barely. Still clutching that carpet bag like it was the only solid thing in the world. House ain't much, I continued. 2 bedrooms upstairs, 1 down. I sleep downstairs. You'll have the room at the end of the hall, next to the children. I paused, cleared my throat again. This part was harder. There's a lock on your door, inside. For you. The words came rough. I ain't the kind of man who… What I mean is, I won't bother you. This is help. That's all this is. She turned her head then, really looked at me for the first time. Her eyes were brown, deep brown, like creek water in shadow. There was something in them, not gratitude, not fear, something harder to name. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small wooden-framed chalkboard, maybe 8 inches square, and a stub of chalk. Her hands moved careful, deliberate, forming letters. Thank you. 2 words. The first thing she'd said to me, something shifted in my chest. I nodded, not trusting my voice. You don't gotta thank me, I managed. We're just surviving, both of us. The truck crested the ridge, and there it was. My place. 2-story clapboard house, white paint peeling, barn leaning slightly east, chicken coop, woodshed, the creek running behind. Smoke rose thin from the chimney, and in the upstairs window, 3 small faces appeared. Watching. Waiting. I felt her go rigid beside me, saw her fingers tighten on that chalkboard until the wood creaked. Because she'd just realized what I'd realized standing in that parlor but been too desperate to admit, she'd walked out of one cage and straight into another, only this time there was no lock keeping people out. Just her, a bag of nothing, and 3 motherless children staring down like judges at a sentencing. And me, fool that I was, thinking $75 could solve what grief had broken. I carried her bag up the narrow stairs, wood creaking under my boots. The children had vanished the second we pulled up. Micah's door stood closed tight. Eli I could see peeking from behind the parlor chair, and Ruth had wedged herself under the kitchen table, thumb jammed in her mouth. The room I showed her was small, clean enough, but bare as a bone. Single bed with a patchwork quilt Sarah's mother made. Dresser with a cracked mirror. Window looking out over the barn and the mountains beyond. Used to be Sarah's sewing room, I said, then wished I hadn't. She'd sit here in the afternoons with her needlework. What I didn't say, I hadn't opened this door in 3 years. Couldn't stand to. I pointed to the brass key hanging on a nail beside the frame. Like I said, lock's yours. She set down her bag and nodded once. I'll have supper on in about an hour. Come down when you're ready. I left her there and went to wrangle the children. An hour later, we sat at the kitchen table like strangers at a funeral. I'd made what I called supper. Beans burned to the bottom of the pot, biscuits hard enough to break teeth, fatback fried to leather. Micah stared at his plate like it had personally offended him. Eli pushed beans around without eating. Ruth stayed under the table. Then Clementine came down the stairs. She stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the scene. Then she pulled out her chalkboard and wrote, "May I?" "May you what?" I asked. She gestured toward the stove. "Oh, yeah. Kitchens. Well, I reckon it's yours now. She moved into the space like she'd been doing it her whole life. Found the flour tin, half empty, some weevils I wasn't proud of. Found the lard, going rancid. Found potatoes in the root cellar, sprouting but salvageable. The children watched her like she was a curiosity from a traveling show. 30 minutes later, the smell changed. Biscuits, real ones, the kind that rise. Gravy, cream thick and smooth. Potatoes mashed with butter I didn't know we had. When she set the plates down, Eli's eyes went wide. He shoved a bite in his mouth and spoke around it. This is good. Micah's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Mama's was better. The words dropped like a stone down a well. I set down my fork. Micah. Well, it's true. His voice pitched higher, defensive. Mama made biscuits every Sunday, and they was fluffy as clouds, and she'd put honey on them, and that's enough. And she'd let me help roll out the dough, and she never burned nothing, and I said enough. He shoved back from the table, chair screeching on the floor, and ran upstairs. His door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence settled like dust. Clementine was writing. She turned the board around. It's okay. He's right to remember her. I stared at those words. At this girl. This stranger I'd bought like livestock. Showing more grace than I deserved. You're kind, I said quietly. That's more than I got any right to expect. The days that followed had a rhythm, but it wasn't smooth. She tried to milk the cow. Bessie kicked the bucket over, milk splashing everywhere. From the barn loft, I heard Micah laugh, sharp and mean. She gathered eggs. The rooster came at her like a demon, spurs flying. She fell backward in the mud, dress ruined. Eli started toward her, but Micah grabbed his arm. Don't touch her. She ain't our mama. She found rope in the shed. Tried to tie a proper hitch. Failed. I came home early from the mill, found her struggling, hands raw. I took the rope without a word, showed her once, slow, deliberate, then handed it back and walked away. At night, Ruth woke screaming, Mama! Mama! When Clementine went to her, the child thrashed, bit her arm hard enough to draw blood. I heard the commotion, lifted Ruth away. I got her. Go on back to bed. The next morning I saw the bite mark, purple and deep. She'd wrapped it in cloth, but blood had seeped through. She never complained, never wrote about it, just kept trying. Sunday came. Church was mandatory in Harlan Hollow. Didn't matter if you believed or not. I told her she could stay home, but she shook her head and wrote, I go where the children go. We walked into that white clapboard church and every head turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Women clutched their purses, men shifted in their pews. My sister Martha met us at the door, lips thin as paper. Well, well, so this is the charity case. Martha, don't. I'm just saying, Oswin, that Sarah's barely cold. She's been gone 3 years. And here you are parading some mute girl like it's normal. Behind her, the whispers started, loud enough to carry. I heard she's touched in the head. Simple. I heard the stepfather beat her so bad she forgot how to talk. Poor thing. Though I don't know what Oswin was thinking, bringing damaged goods around children. Clementine heard every word. I saw it in the way her shoulders drew up, the way her knuckles went white around that chalkboard. She wrote, I need air. She turned and walked out before the service even started. I wanted to follow, wanted to tell those gossiping hens what I thought of their Christian charity. But the boys were watching, and Ruth was already fussing, and I was trapped. The service dragged on. Reverend Polk preached about grace and mercy while his congregation whispered about the girl sitting outside on the steps. When we finally got out, I found her there with Granny Opal, the old Cherokee woman who lived up the mountain. Granny's hand rested on Clementine's shoulder, and she was speaking low, words I couldn't hear. Then from inside the church came a crash, shouting. I ran back in. Micah stood on a pew, face crimson, fists clenched. A hymn book lay at Reverend Polk's feet. The Reverend's forehead was bleeding. That boy is possessed, Polk shouted, dabbing at the blood. Oswin Thatcher, you will control your son, or I will have the sheriff do it. I grabbed Micah by the shoulders. What in the Sam Hill? He said Mama's in hell, Micah screamed, voice breaking. He said because she wasn't baptized proper, she's burning in hell. The congregation went dead silent. And I knew right then that everything was about to get a whole lot worse. Because when you've got a mute girl everyone thinks is cursed, a boy who just assaulted a preacher, and a whole town watching for signs of God's judgment. Well, friend, that's when the torches start coming out. The congregation pressed in like a noose tightening. Women clutched their Bibles, men crossed their arms, children stared wide-eyed from the back pews. Reverend Polk stood at the pulpit, blood still trickling from where the hymn book had caught him above the eyebrow. He pressed a handkerchief to the wound, his other hand raised like he was calling down fire from heaven. "This boy," he declared, voice shaking with righteous fury, "has committed violence in the house of God, against a servant of the Lord." "He's 9 years old," I said, voice low and dangerous. "And you told him his dead mother is burning in hell." "I said no such thing." A boy in the back, Tommy Hutchins, Abel's youngest, shouted out, "Yes, you did. You said anyone who dies unsaved goes to the lake of fire. I heard you." Polk's face went red. "That's doctrine, not personal judgment." "You said my mama's in hell," Micah screamed again, straining against my grip. Tears streamed down his face now, all that rage collapsing into grief. "You said she's burning." My sister Martha stepped forward, pointing a bony finger. "This is what happens, Oswin, when you bring corruption into your home. That mute girl, she's poisoned your children against the church." Every eye in that building swiveled to the doorway where Clementine stood frozen, Granny Opal beside her. "What did you say?" My voice came out quiet, too quiet. "She's a curse." Martha's voice pitched higher. "Everyone knows it. Can't speak because the devil took her tongue. And now look, your own son attacking a man of God." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "We're leaving." I scooped up Ruth, who'd started crying, grabbed Eli's hand, pushed Micah toward the door. "Now! You walk out of this church," Reverend Polk called after us, "and you walk out on your salvation." I stopped, turned. The whole congregation was watching. "Reverend," I said, voice carrying to every corner of that building, "if your version of salvation means telling a 9-year-old boy his mama's burning in hell, then I reckon I'll take my chances elsewhere." I walked out. The children followed. And Clementine, she stepped aside to let us pass, then fell in behind us like she'd always been there. The truck ride home was the longest 5 miles of my life. Nobody spoke. Micah pressed his forehead against the window, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Eli whimpered. Ruth hiccuped through her tears, thumb wedged so far in her mouth I worried she'd choke on it. Finally, Micah's voice came out small and broken. "Is she really in hell, Pa?" My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "No." But the Reverend said, "I don't care what he said. Your mama was the best person I ever knew. If heaven don't want her, then heaven ain't worth getting to." Silence. Then, "I miss her." "I know, son. Me too." From the back seat, I heard chalk scratching on slate. In the rearview mirror, I saw Clementine hold up her board where Micah could see it. "Your mama would be proud of you." Micah stared at those words. Then, so quiet I almost missed it. "You think so?" She nodded. Wrote again. "Standing up for someone you love takes courage. You have it." Something shifted in his face. Not acceptance, not yet. But the hard edges softened just a fraction. We pulled into the yard just as the sun started its slide behind the mountains. I told the children to go inside, wash up, try to settle down. Clementine and I stood by the truck, October wind cutting through the hollow, carrying the smell of wood smoke and coming winter. She was writing on her board, hands trembling. She turned it to face me. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For causing trouble. For being here. For—" "Stop." I took the board from her hands, set it on the truck hood. "You didn't cause this. Town's been looking for reasons to judge me since Sarah died. You're just convenient." She shook her head, reaching for the board. I didn't let her have it. "Listen to me," I said. "What happened in there?" Micah standing up to Polk. "That wasn't about you. That was about a boy defending his mama's memory." "That's good. That's right." She looked up at me then, really looked, and I saw tears tracking down her face. Silent tears. The kind that hurt worse because they got no voice. Martha was wrong, I continued. You ain't cursed. You're just, you're just trying to survive, same as the rest of us. She picked up the chalk, wrote directly on the truck hood since I still had her board. Am I surviving? Before I could answer, Abel Hutchins' truck came roaring up the drive, throwing gravel. He jumped out before it fully stopped, face white as chalk. Oz, we got trouble! What kind? The bad kind. He was breathing hard, like he'd run all the way. Martha went straight to Sheriff Bannon after church. She's filing a complaint. Says that girl's a danger to your children. Says Micah's attack proves it. And Dewey Porter's with her. He's claiming you stole his daughter, that the sale wasn't legal. My blood went cold. I paid him $75 in front of witnesses. He's saying he was drunk, didn't know what he was signing. And Reverend Polk's backing him up. Says the church can't condone the arrangement. Clementine swayed on her feet. I caught her elbow, steadied her. There's more, Abel said, voice dropping. Dewey's drunk mean right now, Oz. He's at the tavern telling anyone who'll listen that he's coming to get his property back, and he ain't alone. He's got Bo Hendricks and the Carver boys with him. Through the kitchen window, I could see the children's faces. Micah watching. Eli pressed close to his brother. Ruth's small hand on the glass. Cliffhanger. That's when we saw the lights. Headlights cutting through the dusk, coming up the mountain road. Not one vehicle. 3, maybe 4, moving slow and deliberate, like a funeral procession or a hunting party. Abel's voice came out tight. They're coming now, Oz, and Sheriff Bannon's leading them. I looked at Clementine. She'd gone pale as milk, one hand pressed to her throat like she couldn't breathe. Her eyes found mine, and in them I saw something I recognized. The look of a cornered animal deciding whether to run or fight. I made my choice right then. Abel, I said, voice steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. Get the children upstairs. Lock them in Micah's room. Don't open that door unless I say. Oz, what are you? Just do it. I turned to the house. And somebody get me my daddy's rifle. The rifle felt heavy in my hands. Heavier than it should have. My daddy's Winchester, the one he carried through France in the First War. I'd cleaned it regular since he passed, but never thought I'd point it at my own neighbors. Abel had the children locked upstairs. Through the window I could see Micah's face pressed to the glass, eyes wide. I turned away before he could see me falter. Clementine stood in the doorway behind me, chalkboard clutched to her chest like a shield. I'd told her to hide, to go upstairs with the children. She'd written one word, no. Stubborn. Even silent, she was stubborn. The trucks rolled to a stop in a half circle, headlights painting the yard white and harsh. Doors opened. Boots hit gravel. Voices carried on the wind, angry, righteous, whiskey brave. Sheriff Marcus Bannon stepped out first, hand resting on his pistol. Behind him came Dewey Porter, weaving drunk but mean with it. Reverend Polk emerged third, clutching his Bible like it could stop bullets. And my sister Martha, face pinched with what she probably thought was holy purpose. Behind them, maybe a dozen men from town. Some I knew, worked with them at the mill, drank with them at Abel's place. Others were just hungry for drama, the kind that feeds on other people's misery. Oswin Thatcher, Sheriff Bannon's voice boomed across the yard. We need to talk. I stepped onto the porch, rifle held loose but ready. Evening, Marcus. Little late for a social call, don't you think? Got a legal complaint filed. Says you're holding that girl against her will. That's so. I kept my voice even. Funny, seeing as I paid for her fair and square. Dewey lurched forward, jabbing a finger at me. That was a loan. I never said she was yours permanent. You took $75, Dewey. Shook Reverend Polk's hand, signed papers. I was drunk. You took advantage. You're drunk right now. Don't see how that helps your case. A few snickers from the crowd. Dewey's face went purple. Reverend Polk stepped forward, voice dripping false concern. Brother Thatcher, this arrangement was made in haste. The church cannot, in good conscience, condone the buying and selling of human souls. It's unseemly. You took 25 of those dollars, I said quietly. Bless the whole thing in your parlor. Seems your conscience was clear enough then. Martha pushed to the front. She's poisoned you, Oswin. Poisoned your children. Look what happened today. Micah attacking a man of God. Micah defended his dead mother's memory. That's called having backbone, Martha. You might not recognize it. Her eyes flashed. That mute witch has cursed this family. Everyone sees it but you. Watch your mouth. It's true. She can't speak because the devil took her tongue. And now she's taking your children's souls. The crowd murmured agreement. I saw hands moving to gun belts, to the axe handles some of them carried. The air smelled like violence waiting to happen. Sheriff Bannon raised his hand. Now, let's all settle down. Oz, I don't want trouble. Just send the girl out. We'll sort this legal-like at the courthouse. She stays. The hell she does, Dewey shouted. She's mine by blood and by God. You sold her like livestock, I said, voice hard as iron. That makes her mine by law. Your law, Marcus. The one you're sworn to uphold. Bannon shifted uncomfortably. He knew I was right. Knew the whole thing was legal, even if it stank. That's when Clementine moved. Stepped out from behind me onto the porch. In the harsh headlights, she looked impossibly small, impossibly young. But she stood straight, chin up, chalkboard in her hands. Clem, I said low, get back inside. She shook her head, wrote on her board and held it up to the crowd. I am not a child. I am 17 years old enough to marry with guardian consent. My guardian gave consent. You were all witnesses. Sheriff Bannon frowned, reading the words. Well, that's actually true. Dewey spat in the dirt. She don't know what she's saying. She's simple, Clementine wrote again, hands steady despite the fear I could see in her eyes. I know exactly what I'm saying. I would rather die than go back to you. The words hung in the air like smoke. You ungrateful little... Dewey started forward. Two men grabbed his arms, held him back. I fed you, clothed you, gave you a roof. She wrote faster now, chalk scratching loud in the silence. You beat me. You beat my mother until she died. You killed my dog when I was 12, and that's when I stopped talking. Everyone here knows it. Everyone did nothing. She turned the board slowly, making sure every man in that yard could read it. Faces shifted. Men looked away. Women clutched their coats tighter. Then Doc Brennan pushed through the crowd. Old, bent, but his voice carried, "She's telling the truth." All eyes swung to him. I treated Mary Porter, Clem's mother, for broken bones, cracked ribs, skull fracture once. Every time she said she fell, every time I knew she didn't. His voice shook with old anger. And I documented it. 20 years of records, including the day I examined Clementine after Dewey broke her collarbone. She was 13 years old. The crowd erupted. Shocked voices, angry murmurs. That true, Dewey? Sheriff Bannon's hand moved to his gun. She was clumsy, always falling. The break pattern was defensive, Doc cut in. She raised her arm to block a blow. Bannon's face hardened. Dewey Porter, I think you and I need to have a conversation. Down at the jail! This is horseshit! Dewey thrashed against the men holding him. She's mine! Mine! Not anymore, I said quietly. As they dragged Dewey toward Bannon's truck, screaming curses and threats, the crowd began to disperse. Trucks started up. Headlights swung away. Reverend Polk left without a word, Bible tucked under his arm, like shame. Martha was the last to go. She stared at me across the yard, face twisted with something between pity and disgust. You're making a mistake, Oswin. Mark my words. Maybe, I said, but it's mine to make. When the last truck disappeared down the mountain, the silence rushed back in. Crickets, wind in the pines, the creek running behind the house. Doc Brennan stood at the bottom of the porch steps. That was brave, child, he said to Clementine. Your mama would be proud, she wrote. Thank you. He nodded and left, walking to his car slow and tired. I turned to Clementine. She was trembling now that it was over, adrenaline draining away. The chalkboard slipped from her fingers, clattered on the porch. That was, I started. The scream cut through the night like a knife. From upstairs, high and terrified. Not Micah's voice, not Eli's. Ruth. We ran, boots pounding stairs. Abel was already at Micah's door, yanking it open. The boys stood there, faces white, pointing to the window. Ruth lay on the floor beneath it, small body crumpled, not moving. The window stood open. She must have been trying to see what was happening. Leaned too far. The old screen gave way. Ruth! I dropped to my knees beside her. She was breathing, but wrong, shallow and wet. When I touched her chest, she whimpered, a sound so small it barely qualified as human. Doc Brennan was already gone. Nearest hospital was 40 miles of mountain roads in the dark. Abel's voice came out strangled. Oz, her lips are turning blue. Ruth's breathing sounded like something tearing. Wet, ragged. Each inhale a struggle, each exhale a prayer she'd get another. Doc Brennan made it back in 20 minutes. Must have been halfway down the mountain when he heard Abel's horn blaring. He took the stairs 2 at a time despite his 70 years, black bag swinging. One look at Ruth and his face went grim. Croup, he said, fingers gentle on her throat. Bad case, airways swelling shut. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my pockets so the boys wouldn't see. What do we do? Steam, humidity, keep her upright so gravity helps. He pulled out a small brown bottle. This is camphor oil. Mix it with hot water. Make a tent over the bed with blankets. Let her breathe the vapor. He looked at me hard. And pray, Oswin. I've seen children pull through. I've also... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. How long? 3 days, maybe 4. Either the swelling goes down or... He snapped his bag shut. I'll check back tomorrow morning. Don't let her lie flat. Don't leave her alone. After he left, the house settled into a terrible quiet. Micah and Eli sat on the floor outside Ruth's room, backs against the wall, not speaking. Abel made coffee, nobody drank. I pulled a chair to Ruth's bedside. Her tiny hand was hot, dry as paper. When I wrapped my fingers around it, she didn't squeeze back. Pa? Micah's voice from the doorway, small and scared. Is she gonna die like Mama did? The question hit like a fist. No. But what if... I said no. Too sharp. I softened my voice. Boys, I need you to go to bed. I'll sit with her. I want to stay, Eli whispered. Go. They left, reluctant, looking back every few steps. I sat there alone, head in my hands, listening to my daughter struggle for each breath. 3 years I'd kept these children alive after Sarah died. 3 years of feeling like I was drowning but kicking hard enough to stay above water. And now, the door opened quiet as a ghost. Clementine stood there holding a basin of steaming water, clean cloths draped over her arm, and something wrapped in cheesecloth that smelled sharp and green. She set everything down, knelt beside the bed. I found my voice. Clem, you don't have to. She held up one finger. Wait. Then wrote on a scrap of paper she'd brought. Granny Opal taught me, mint and pine, clears the lungs. Doc said camphor. This too, both together. Trust me. I looked at her face, saw something there I hadn't seen before. Certainty. Like she'd done this before, pulled someone back from the edge. All right, I said. She worked quick and efficient, crushed the herbs into the hot water, draped blankets over the headboard to make a tent, lifted Ruth, so small, so fragile, and positioned her upright against pillows. Then she wrote, You rest. I'll watch. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. 3 days later, I don't remember much of those 72 hours. They blurred together like fever dreams. What I remember, Clementine never left that room, not once. She changed the water every 2 hours, kept the steam going. When Ruth's fever spiked, she stripped the child down and sponged her with cool water, singing something. No, not singing, humming. A melody with no words but somehow full of them. When Ruth coughed up phlegm, Clementine held a bowl and rubbed her back in slow circles. When Ruth cried weakly for her mama, Clementine gathered her close and rocked her, tears streaming down her own face. I tried to spell her, tried to take over so she could sleep. She'd shake her head, right, sleep in the chair. I have her. Second night, around 3 a.m., Ruth's breathing got worse, gurgling, drowning in her own lungs. I woke to find Clementine sitting upright with Ruth pressed against her chest, patting her back rhythmically. The child coughed, violent, body-racking, and brought up a clot of mucus the size of a walnut. After that, the breathing eased. Not much, but enough. Third morning, Ruth's fever broke. I woke, must have dozed off finally, to find pale sunlight creeping through the window. The steam tent was down. Ruth lay quiet, breathing soft and even, and Clementine sat slumped in the chair, asleep sitting up, one hand still resting on Ruth's chest. Her face was hollow with exhaustion, dark circles under her eyes, hair fallen loose from its bun. Beautiful, I thought, then caught myself thinking it. Ruth stirred, blinked, focused on me. Pa? Her voice was a rasp, but it was there. Hey, baby girl. I'm thirsty. I laughed, actually laughed, tears running down my face. I bet you are. I helped her drink. She managed 3 sips before her eyes found Clementine asleep in the chair. Who's that? Ruth asked. My throat closed up. That's Clem. She took care of you. Is she an angel? Something like that. Ruth reached out one small hand and touched Clementine's arm. The touch woke her. She jerked upright, alert instantly, eyes going to Ruth. When she saw the child awake, watching her, something broke in her face. Relief, joy. She pressed both hands over her mouth, shoulders shaking. Ruth smiled, weak but real. Thank you for singing to me. Clementine went still, stared at the child. I heard you, Ruth said. In my dreams. You were singing about birds and mountains and home. Clementine's hands trembled as she picked up her chalk and board. You're welcome, sweet girl. Will you sing again sometime? I'll try. That afternoon, after Ruth was truly out of danger and Doc Brennan had pronounced it a miracle, I found Clementine in the kitchen. She was scrubbing her hands at the pump, washing 3 days of sickness off her skin. I stood in the doorway, not knowing what to say. How do you thank someone for saving your child's life? Clem, she turned, drying her hands on her apron. I can't. The words stuck. I tried again. Thank you don't seem like enough, she wrote. She's a good child, worth fighting for. They all are. And you fought for them like... I swallowed hard. Like they were yours. She looked down at her board, wrote slowly, maybe they could be. Before I could answer, Abel burst through the door, face white as limestone. Oz, we got a problem. Can it wait? Ruth, just... No. He thrust a piece of paper at me, official looking, county seal at the top. I read it once. Twice. Couldn't make it make sense. It's a custody petition, Abel said quietly. Filed this morning. Martha's claiming you're an unfit father. Says Ruth's injury proves it. Says you're too distracted by Clem to properly care for your children. She's asking the county to remove them from your custody. My vision tunneled. She can't. She can, and she did. Circuit judge arrives day after tomorrow to hear the case. Abel's voice dropped. Oz, if you lose, they'll take the children. All 3 of them, and there won't be a damn thing you can do about it. I looked at Clementine, saw my own fear reflected in her eyes. We'd just saved Ruth's life, and now my sister was trying to tear my family apart. And the worst part? She might actually win. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that custody petition until the words blurred together. Martha's signature at the bottom, neat and precise as a knife cut. Reverend Polk listed as a witness to my moral failings. 3 affidavits from town busybodies who'd never set foot in my house but somehow knew I was unfit. The hearing was set for October 12th. 2 days. We need a lawyer, Abel said, pacing. Someone from Lexington, maybe, someone the judge'll respect. With what money? I rubbed my face. I got maybe $40 to my name after buying. I stopped, glanced at Clementine. She stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. After buying me, she finished with her chalkboard. No judgment in it. Just fact. I didn't mean... I know what you meant. and I know I'm the reason this is happening. That ain't true, isn't it? She wrote faster now, chalk scratching hard. Martha hates me. The town thinks I'm cursed, and now your children might pay for it. Before I could argue, boots sounded on the porch. Heavy, deliberate. I reached for the rifle. Easy, Abel said, peering through the window. It's just… Huh, that's strange. What? It's Granny Opal, and she ain't alone. The door opened without a knock. Mountain folks don't stand on ceremony. Granny Opal walked in like she owned the place, leaning on a gnarled walking stick. Behind her came someone I didn't expect to see, Reverend Polk. I was on my feet, rifle halfway up before Granny raised her hand. Put that fool thing down, Oswin Thatcher. Man's here to help, not hurt. Help? I stared at Polk. He's one of the witnesses against me. Polk removed his hat, turned it in his hands. Up close, he looked older than I remembered, tired. The cut on his forehead from Micah's hymn book was healing but still visible. That's why I'm here, he said quietly. To tell you I'm withdrawing my statement. Silence dropped like a stone. Come again? I'm withdrawing my affidavit, and I'm prepared to testify on your behalf if it comes to that. I looked at Granny Opal. She shrugged. Don't look at me. Man came to my door this morning asking for guidance. I just listened. Polk stepped forward. May I sit? I nodded, too stunned to speak. He pulled out a chair, sat heavy like his bones hurt. I've been thinking, he began, about what happened in the church, about what I said. He glanced at Clementine, then away. I was raised to believe that salvation comes through proper baptism, proper doctrine, and I've preached that for 30 years. But lately, I've been wondering if maybe I've confused doctrine with compassion. That a fact? I said flatly. Your boy, Micah, he was defending his mother's honor, and I told him she was damned. Not in those exact words, but the meaning was clear enough. His voice roughened. I watched a 9-year-old child's faith break in real time, and then I watched him get dragged out of my church in disgrace. You're the one who demanded he be punished. I know. He met my eyes. And I was wrong. Abel made a noise in his throat. Even Granny Opal looked surprised. Polk continued. I went home that night and I couldn't sleep. Kept seeing that boy's face. Kept hearing him scream that his mama was in hell. He swallowed hard. So I did something I should have done years ago. I read the Gospels. Not the doctrine books, not the commentaries. Just Jesus' own words. And nowhere. Nowhere. Does Jesus say a child should be told his dead mother is burning for eternity. Nowhere does he say we should condemn a frightened girl for being unable to speak. Nowhere does he say we should tear families apart in his name. He pulled papers from his coat pocket. This is a letter withdrawing my support of Martha's petition, and this, another paper, is a character witness statement, testifying that you're a good father who took in a vulnerable girl when no one else would, that you've been faithful in church for years until I drove you out with my own hard-heartedness. I stared at the papers like they might bite. Why? The word came out harsh. Why now? Polk looked at Clementine. Because that girl stood in front of an angry mob and told the truth when it would have been easier to run. And because Doc Brennan came to see me yesterday. Told me what she did for your daughter. 3 days without sleep, nursing a child who wasn't even hers. His voice cracked. That's the kind of love Jesus talked about. The kind I've been too blind to see. Granny Opal tapped her walking stick on the floor. There's more. More? She nodded to Polk. He pulled out one final document. It's a statement from Doc Brennan. Medical records documenting Dewey Porter's abuse of Clementine and her mother going back 15 years. He's willing to testify, and he's contacted 3 other families. One's Dewey's hurt over the years. They'll testify too. My hands were shaking as I took the papers. This is a chance, Granny Opal said. Not a guarantee. Judge Carmine's a hard man. But it's something. Clementine was crying silently, one hand pressed to her mouth. Polk stood, walked over to her. Miss Porter, he said formally, I owe you an apology. What I implied about you in that church, about being cursed, about poisoning this family, it was cruel and unchristian. I'm sorry." She stared at him, then slowly picked up her chalk. "You hurt Micah." "I did. Why should I forgive you?" Polk's face worked. "You shouldn't. Not unless you choose to. But I'm asking anyway." Long moment. Then she wrote, "I forgive you. But if you hurt these children again, God won't be the one you answer to." Despite everything, I almost smiled. This silent girl had more backbone than half the men in the county. Polk nodded. "Understood." He turned to me. "The hearing's day after tomorrow, 10 o'clock. I'll be there." After he left, Granny Opal lingered. She looked at Clementine, then at me. "You two are dancing around something," she said bluntly. "Best figure out what it is before that judge starts asking questions about the nature of your arrangement." "It's just, we're not," I fumbled. "I know what you're not. Question is, what are you?" She tapped her stick again. "Judge is going to ask if this is a real marriage or just a work contract. You better have an answer that don't make you both look like fools." She was almost out the door when she stopped, looked back. "Oh, and Oswin? Martha's not done. I heard her talking to Bo Hendricks this morning at the general store. She's planning something for tomorrow night, the night before the hearing." "What kind of something?" Granny's face was grim. "The kind that involves fire and a crowd. The kind that makes sure you don't make it to that courthouse at all." The door closed behind her, leaving us in silence. Abel spoke first. "She's talking about a burning. They're going to burn you out." I looked at Clementine, at this girl who'd saved my daughter, stood up to a mob, forgiven a man who'd wronged her. This girl I'd bought for $75 and somehow, somewhere along the way, started seeing as something more than help. "Then we got one night to prepare," I said. "And come morning, we either fight for this family or we lose everything." They came at midnight. I'd been expecting them earlier, figured they'd wait till full dark, maybe 10 o'clock. But midnight's when the devil does his work, or so my mama used to say. Abel saw them first. He'd been watching from the barn loft with binoculars, taking first shift while I tried to rest. His whistle, sharp, 2 short bursts, cut through the October night. I was up and moving before the echo died. Through the window, I counted torches. 8, maybe 10. Moving slow up the mountain road, orange flames bobbing like angry fireflies. Behind them, the silhouettes of men on foot, carrying, what? Axes, rifles, children, I said to Clementine. She was already gathering them, herding Micah and Eli toward the root cellar. Ruth clung to her neck, still weak from the croup, but conscious enough to be terrified. "Pa, what's happening?" Micah's voice shook. "Nothing you need to worry about. Just a precaution." I tried to sound calm. Failed. "You go with Clem. Stay quiet. Don't come out till I say." "But go!" Clementine met my eyes over the children's heads. Wrote quickly, "Don't die." "Working on it," I muttered. She disappeared down the cellar stairs with my whole world in her arms. Abel came running from the barn, rifle in hand. "It's Martha. She's leading them. Bo Hendricks, the Carver boys, maybe 6 others I couldn't make out." "Sheriff?" "No sign of him. This is unofficial." Meaning we were on our own. I checked my daddy's Winchester. 12 rounds. Abel had his shotgun, 2 men against 10. "We ain't killing nobody," I said. "Speak for yourself. They come at this house with torches. I ain't asking their intentions." The torches stopped at the property line. Just stood there, flames crackling, waiting. Then Martha's voice cut through the dark. "Oswin, we need to talk." I stepped onto the porch. Abel flanked me, shotgun held ready. "Little late for visiting, Martha. This is your last chance, brother. Send that girl out. Give up this foolishness. The judge will go easier on you if you show some sense. The hearing's tomorrow. We'll let the law decide." "The law?" She laughed, bitter as lie. "The law says you bought a human being like livestock. The law says you're living in sin with an underage girl. The law says your children are in danger. The law says I'm married. Legal contract filed with the county. A contract made under false pretenses." Her voice rose. "That girl's cursed, Oswin. Can't you see it? Sarah died because you stopped paying attention to your family. And now Ruth nearly died because you're too busy with your bought woman to watch your own children. The words hit like fists, because part of me, the dark, guilty part, wondered if she was right. Ruth nearly died, I said slowly, because she fell from a window trying to see if her father was safe. And she lived because Clementine didn't sleep for 3 days nursing her back. You want to talk about who cares for my children, sister? Let's talk. Murmurs from the men behind Martha. Uncertain, wavering. Bo Hendricks stepped forward, axe handle across his shoulders. Enough talking. We're burning this corruption out. You got 5 minutes to evacuate. Like hell. Then you burn with it. He raised the axe handle. The other men shifted, torches lifting. That's when the voice came from the darkness behind them. Anyone lights that fire answers to me. Every head turned. Judge Carmine stepped into the torchlight. He was a small man, barely 5.5 feet, 70 if he was a day. But he carried a weight that had nothing to do with size. 30 years on the circuit bench. 50 years practicing law before that. He wore a long coat despite the mild night, hat pulled low, and in his hand was a walking stick that looked more like a weapon. Behind him, Sheriff Bannon, Doc Brennan, Granny Opal, and, I blinked, Reverend Polk. Judge, Martha stammered. This is attempted arson, Mrs. Thatcher. Conspiracy to commit property destruction. Vigilante justice, and about 6 other charges I can think of off the top of my head. His voice was dry as dust but hard as granite. Sheriff Bannon, please take these good citizens' names. Bannon pulled out a notepad, looking uncomfortable but dutiful. Now wait just a minute. Bo started. You wait. Judge Carmine pointed his walking stick at Bo like a sword. I came up here tonight because a little bird told me there might be trouble, and what do I find? A mob with torches at a man's home the night before his custody hearing. That smells like intimidation to me. Martha's face had gone white. We were just what? Just planning to ensure Mr. Thatcher couldn't make it to court tomorrow? Just planning to remove any evidence that might support his case? The judge's eyes swept the crowd. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. He turned to me. Mr. Thatcher. Are you harmed? No, sir. Are your children safe? Yes, sir. Then we'll see you in my courtroom at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And Mrs. Thatcher? He turned back to Martha. I strongly suggest you reconsider your petition, because if this hearing proceeds, I will be asking some very pointed questions about your methods. Martha opened her mouth, closed it. The fire had gone out of her, metaphorically at least. The torches still burned. Put those out, Judge Carmine ordered. Now. One by one, the torches were extinguished, ground into the dirt. Smoke rose like ghosts in the moonlight. The crowd dispersed, shamefaced and silent. Martha left without another word, back rigid, defeat in every line of her body. When they were gone, the judge approached the porch. Mr. Thatcher, I understand there's a young woman living in your home, a Miss Clementine Porter? My stomach dropped. Yes, sir. I'd like to speak with her, tonight. Before tomorrow's hearing. She's in the cellar with the children, hiding. Then please ask her to come out. I promise you, I'm not here to cause harm, but I need to understand this situation before I make any rulings. I looked at Abel. He shrugged. No choice. I went to the cellar door, called down. Clem, it's safe. There's someone here who needs to talk to you. She emerged slowly, climbing the stairs with Ruth still clinging to her, Micah and Eli right behind. When she stepped into the kitchen and saw Judge Carmine standing there, she froze. The judge studied her for a long moment, took in the exhaustion in her face, the way she held Ruth protective and gentle, the chalkboard hanging from a cord around her neck. Miss Porter, he said quietly, I need you to answer one question for me, and I need the truth. She nodded, reaching for her chalk. Are you here of your own free will? Or are you being held against your wishes? The question hung in the air like smoke. Everything, my children, my home, my future, balanced on however she chose to answer. Her hand trembled as she wrote. The chalk scratched loud in the silence. She turned the board around, and what was written there would determine all our fates. Clementine's hand shook as she held up the chalkboard. In the lamplight, the chalk letters stood out white and clear. I am here because I choose to be. No one is holding me against my will. Judge Carmine studied the words, then studied her face. That's what I needed to hear. But I have more questions, if you'll indulge an old man. She nodded, chalk poised. Why do you choose to stay? You could leave. Walk away from all this mess. She wrote slowly, carefully. Because for the first time in my life, I matter to someone. These children need me, and I need them. And Mr. Thatcher? Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the board. She wrote, he gave me dignity when everyone else saw damaged goods. That's worth more than freedom. The judge was silent for a long moment. Then, one more question. If I rule in Martha's favor tomorrow, if I take these children from this home, what would you do? Clementine didn't hesitate. Her chalk moved fast. Sure, I would fight, and I would lose, but I would fight anyway. Judge Carmine's weathered face cracked into something that might have been a smile. Good answer, young lady. He turned to me. Mr. Thatcher, get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, and I suggest you bring Miss Porter with you. She may need to testify. After he left with the others, the house felt too quiet. Abel had gone to check the perimeter one more time. The children were finally asleep in the cellar, exhausted, just Clementine and me in the kitchen, lamplight casting long shadows. That was brave, I said. What you told the judge? She shrugged, wrote, it was true. Still brave. I poured coffee neither of us wanted. Clem, about tomorrow. She held up a hand, wrote, I know what you're going to say, that I don't have to testify, that I can stay hidden. Actually, I was going to say the opposite. I think you should testify. I think you should tell them everything. Why? Because they need to see you, not the rumors, not Martha's version. You, the woman who saved my daughter's life, who stood up to a mob, who chose to stay when you could have run. She looked down at her board, writing something, erasing it, trying again. Finally, what if I'm not enough? What if they take the children anyway? I crossed the kitchen, stood in front of her, close enough to see the fear in her eyes. Then we'll have tried. Together. And that's more than I've done in 3 years. The courtroom was packed. Seemed like half of Harlan Hollow had shown up to watch. Martha sat at the front with her lawyer, a slick man from Lexington in a suit that cost more than my truck. I sat with Reverend Polk on one side, Doc Brennan on the other, Clementine beside me, chalkboard in her lap, fingers white-knuckled around the edges. The children were with Granny Opal outside, didn't want them hearing whatever ugliness was about to unfold. Judge Carmine entered, and the room stood. He settled behind the bench, adjusted his spectacles, and opened the file. We're here on a petition for emergency custody filed by Mrs. Martha Thatcher. Mrs. Thatcher, your opening statement. Martha's lawyer stood, smooth as oil. Your Honor, we're here today because 3 innocent children are in imminent danger. Their father, Oswin Thatcher, has brought into their home a mentally unstable young woman with a history of trauma. Just last week, his youngest daughter nearly died. From croup, Doc Brennan interrupted. A childhood illness that has nothing to do with Miss Porter. The lawyer continued, while under the care of this unqualified stranger. Furthermore, Mr. Thatcher's own son has become violent, attacking a minister of God in church, defending his mother's memory, Reverend Polk said quietly, which I provoked. The lawyer's smooth facade cracked. Your Honor, these interruptions are from my witnesses, I said, standing. If that's all right with the court. Judge Carmine leaned back. Mr. Thatcher, you're representing yourself? Can't afford otherwise, Your Honor, but I got truth on my side. Figure that's worth something. Proceed. I took a breath. Your Honor, my sister says I'm unfit, says I can't care for my children. She's wrong. My voice steadied. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, best woman I ever knew, and I fell apart, barely kept the farm running, fed my kids beans and biscuits most nights, couldn't braid my daughter's hair. Couldn't stop my boys from growing up wild. Martha leaned forward, triumphant. Her lawyer was already making notes. But then Clementine came, I continued. And, yeah, the arrangement wasn't conventional. Yeah, I paid for her, and I'm not proud of that. But what happened after, that's what matters. I turned to Clementine. Stand up. She hesitated, then rose, chalkboard clutched to her chest. This woman, I said to the courtroom, nursed my daughter through 3 days of croup without sleep, stood up to a mob, forgave a man who wronged her, and chose to stay when she could have run. Your Honor, Martha's lawyer interrupted, this is all very touching, but it doesn't address the fundamental issue. Mr. Thatcher purchased this girl like property. That alone shows, a new voice cut in, that my brother-in-law was desperate enough to do something stupid to save his family. Every head turned. Martha stood, face pale, hands trembling. Your Honor, I need to withdraw my petition. Silence. Absolute, total silence. Her lawyer grabbed her arm. Mrs. Thatcher, we discussed. She yanked free. No, I'm done. Her voice shook. This is wrong. All of it. Judge Carmine leaned forward. Explain. Martha's face crumpled. I was angry. Angry that Oswin moved on. Angry that Sarah died and left me alone. She was my best friend, not just his wife. And when he brought that girl home, I saw it as him forgetting Sarah, replacing her. Tears streamed now. So I convinced myself he was endangering the children. Convinced myself I was protecting them. But the truth is, she looked at me. The truth is, you're a better father now than you've been in 3 years. And it's because of her. She turned to Clementine. I'm sorry. I called you cursed, called you dangerous, but you saved Ruth, and I can't take those children from the first real home they've had since Sarah died. The courtroom erupted. Judge Carmine banged his gavel. Order! As the noise died down, Martha's lawyer stood, face red with fury. Your Honor, my client is clearly emotionally compromised. I move that. Your client just withdrew her petition, the judge said flatly. Case dismissed. More eruption, more gavel banging. But I barely heard it, because I was watching Martha collapse into a chair, sobbing. And I was thinking about how grief makes people do terrible things, how fear twists love into something ugly. Judge Carmine called for quiet again. Mr. Thatcher, Miss Porter, approach the bench. We did, Clementine's hand finding mine as we walked. The judge looked at our joined hands, then at our faces. I'm dismissing this case, he said quietly, but I have concerns. This marriage, if we can call it that, was contracted under dubious circumstances. Miss Porter, do you understand you have rights, that you can leave anytime? She wrote, I understand. And yet you stay. Yes. Why? She wrote for a long time, then held up the board. Because love isn't something you fall into by accident. It's something you build, piece by piece, choice by choice. And I choose this. The judge studied her, then me, then nodded slowly. Then I'm ordering one thing, that within 30 days, you two appear before me again for a proper marriage ceremony. One where Miss Porter can consent freely, without coercion, without desperation. If she still chooses this life, then by God, we'll make it legal in every sense of the word. He banged his gavel. Court adjourned. As we walked out into the October sunshine, children running to meet us, the town watching, I felt something shift. Not everything was fixed, but maybe, we had a chance. Then I saw him, Dewey Porter, standing across the street, watching, waiting. And I knew it wasn't over yet. Dewey Porter stood in the middle of Main Street like a man with nothing left to lose, which, I reckoned, he was. The courthouse had emptied behind us, townspeople dispersing, Martha being comforted by friends, the judge heading to his hotel, but Dewey stayed rooted, swaying slightly, a bottle visible in his coat pocket. That's it then? He called out. His voice carried across the street, slurred but venomous. You just take my daughter and nobody says nothing? Sheriff Bannon started toward him. Dewey, go home, sleep it off. Sleep it off? Dewey laughed, bitter and broken. I got no home. Bank foreclosed last week. I got nothing. And he pointed at me. He's got everything. My daughter, respect, a family, while I'm dying alone. Clementine's hand tightened in mine. I felt her trembling. You made your choices, Dewey, I said quietly. Live with them. Choices? He stumbled forward. I loved Mary. Loved her more than breath. And when she died, that girl. He pointed at Clementine. She looked at me like I killed her, like it was my fault. Every single day, those eyes accusing me. You did kill her, Doc Brennan said from behind us. 20 years of beatings. I documented every one. Dewey's face crumpled. I never meant. I just got so angry. The drinking, the debts, everything falling apart. And Mary, she'd look at me with pity, and I couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand seeing what I'd become. He sank to his knees in the street, bottle dropping, whiskey spreading in the dust. I'm sorry, he sobbed. God help me, I'm sorry. Mary, I'm sorry. Clementine, I'm. Clementine pulled her hand from mine, walked across that street alone. Clem, don't. I started. She held up one finger. Wait. She stood over Dewey, this man who'd beaten her, sold her, tried to take her back. This man who'd stolen her voice and nearly her life. She knelt in the dust beside him, pulled out her chalkboard and wrote, held it in front of his face. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, because I deserve to be free of you. Dewey stared at those words, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on his face. She wrote again, but if you ever come near me or this family again, forgiveness won't save you. She stood, turned, walked back to me without looking back. Sheriff Bannon helped Dewey to his feet. Come on, I'll take you to the church. Reverend Polk's got a program for men like you, if you're serious about changing. As they led him away, Granny Opal appeared at my elbow. That girl's stronger than half the men in this county. I'm learning that. We gathered at Sarah's grave as the sun set, not for mourning this time, for something else. The white oak stood tall, leaves turning gold and red. At its base, the marker I'd carved 3 years ago. Sarah Thatcher, beloved wife and mother. Micah had asked to come here, said he needed to tell his mama something. We stood in a circle, me, Clementine, the 3 children, Abel, Granny Opal, Doc Brennan, even Reverend Polk. Micah stepped forward first, placed a hand on the marker. Mama, he said, voice small but steady, I know you're watching, and I know you'd want us to be happy. Pa's been sad so long, but Miss Clem, he glanced back at her. She makes him smile again, makes us all smile. He pulled something from his pocket, a small carved bird, whittled from pine. I made this for you, but I think you'd want me to give it to Clem instead, to say thank you for taking care of us. He turned, held it out to Clementine. She took it with trembling hands, tears streaming, wrote on her board, I will treasure it forever. Ruth came next, carrying wildflowers. Mama, I don't remember you good, but Daddy says you were kind. Miss Clem is kind too. Is that okay? She laid the flowers at the base of the tree. Eli just stood there, hand in mine, and whispered, I love you, Mama, and I love Miss Clem too. Is that allowed? I squeezed his hand. Yeah, son. It's allowed. Then I stepped forward. Hadn't planned what to say. The words came anyway. Sarah, I buried my heart here with you. Thought that was safest. Thought if I never opened it again, I'd never hurt like that again. My voice cracked. But these past weeks, I learned something. A closed heart don't protect you from pain. It just keeps out the light. I looked at Clementine. This woman, she didn't replace you. Nobody could. But she brought something back I thought was dead. Hope. And if you're watching, if you're somewhere out there, I think you'd approve. Clementine moved to stand beside me. She wrote on her board, held it up to the tree. I promised to honor her memory, to love these children as she would have, and to help him heal. The sun touched the mountain ridge, turning everything gold. Granny Opal stepped forward, pulling something from her coat, a length of white ribbon embroidered with symbols I didn't recognize. Cherokee tradition, she said. When a new mother joins the family, we bind her to the old, not to replace, to continue. She tied the ribbon around Clementine's wrist, then laid the other end on Sarah's marker. You're connected now, past and present, both mothers to these children. That's when Micah spoke again, voice stronger now. Miss Clem, can I, can I call you Mama, or is that wrong? Clementine went still, looked at the grave, then at Micah, then at me. I nodded. It's not wrong, son. It's just different. You had one mama who you'll always love. Now you got another. Heart's big enough for both. Micah crossed to Clementine, wrapped his arms around her waist. Then, Mama Clem, is that okay? She dropped to her knees, pulled all three children close, and for the first time since I'd known her, she made a sound. Not words, just a keening, joyful sob that came from somewhere deep and locked away. And then she sang. No words, just melody. Broken and rusty from 5 years of silence, but there, a lullaby, soft and sweet, hummed into the children's hair. We all stood frozen, witnessing a miracle. When she finally pulled back, she picked up her chalk with shaking hands. I'm sorry it's not perfect. I don't remember how. It's perfect, Eli whispered. It sounds like home. Judge Carmine married us proper this time. Clementine wore a simple white dress that Granny Opal had sewn. I wore my father's suit, pressed and cleaned. The children stood as witnesses, scrubbed and smiling. When the judge asked if she took me of her own free will, she didn't use her chalkboard. She opened her mouth and in a voice rough and unused, but unmistakably hers, said, I do. The courthouse erupted in gasps and tears. She turned to me, voice growing stronger. I choose this. I choose you. I choose them. Not because I have to, because I want to. I kissed her then, in front of God and Judge Carmine and half of Harlan Hollow. And when we walked out into the November sunshine, the children running ahead, the mountain wind carrying the smell of coming winter, I realized something. $75 hadn't bought me a wife. It had bought me a chance. And we'd built everything else, the love, the family, the home, with our own hands, one choice at a time. That night, by lamplight, Clementine sat at the kitchen table writing, not on her chalkboard, in a journal. I read over her shoulder. My name is Clementine Thatcher. For 5 years I had no voice. For 17 years I had no home. But today I have both. Not because someone gave them to me, because I chose to speak, because I chose to stay, because sometimes the cages we're sold into become the homes we build, and sometimes the silence we carry becomes the song we finally sing. She looked up at me, smiled, and in her newly found voice whispered, Come to bed, Oswin. Our family's waiting. And in the morning, we'd start again. But this time, we'd start as we meant to continue, together, by choice, as family, not because we had to, because we wanted to. And that made all the difference.